Welcome to Sergey's podcast. I'm here with Sergey Wong, the founder and CEO of VenturX, a startup benchmarking platform that prepares and connects startups with investor funding. Today, VenturX has over 200 million of investor funding to help give out the most promising and prepared startups in the world. Sydney, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sydney, so let's start with your career journey because I've heard certain stories online. Now, how did you come up with an idea to move to Silicon Valley? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so I was working in marketing automation and tech, and then I had a friend who said if I was very serious about learning more about tech and startup, then I have to move back to the Valley or have to move to the Valley. So from his offer, I bought a one-way ticket within 10 days and flew to Silicon Valley, and I moved in with him. And then I stayed there until my visa was like, you should not be here anymore. So so I was there for several months, and that's when I got the idea of VenturX because I met all of these great startups. I talked to every Uber driver, every dog walker on WAG, every single TaskRabbitor, and they were so inspiring in terms of they had an exact path of where they wanted to go. They were always futuristic thinking, and I thought that it was great to see so many new startup ideas, and I always felt that the startup industry is kind of like a battlefield with very few winners. So I created this platform in order to hopefully create more winners in this industry.
Right. I did hear about the visa story. I wanted to ask you about it, but you just answered. So with VenturX, like you obviously help businesses to grow, and you have the certain tool that you're using, which we'll dive a little bit later in more detail. But how is it different conceptually from what Mars is doing, what DMZ is doing?
So that's a great question. So VenturX, I want to be able to reach on a global scale. That's why we're building it out as a platform as opposed to an in-person in-house program. So they are great programs that you can go to, and they have mentors and teachers and everything that really help you with your each individualized and customized startup problems and issues and different paths to go on. And they also then personally connect you to the outside of their network or possible investors. What we have here is benchmarking. So that means that when you walk into a room and you are pitching to all the great VCs out there, you believe that you're the only person in the room. That is true at that time. However, they are also comparing you with all the other ones within their focus, which is the same ones in your industry. And you don't really know where you rank in comparison. What VenturX will do is that it would give you clear benchmarks on what is successful, what is not successful when it comes to these kinds of VCs, and where other people are in the industry in comparison as well. So then you are more informed when you walk into the room and you make those connections.
So it's a benchmarking tool. And what about, Sydney, what about the segments or how do you segment businesses and then benchmark against it? Like, are you looking at revenue? Are you looking at industry? Are you looking at both?
So that's a great question. So when it comes to certain types of spaces, so SaaS, for example, software as a service, and within software, they are really, really interesting when they have high engagement. So we have 4 different kinds of metrics: product market fit, conversion, and engagement. Oh, sorry, I messed that up. We have runway, we have conversion, and we have engagement. So what that means is that how many leads do you have that are converting, and how are the leads using it in terms of usage as well as retention. So when it comes to software as a service, for example, you could have one person who is ordering from your food delivery app. I'm using that because it's a common example. You and I both have it.
Of course.
So if it's one person ordering from you versus if it's 100 people that are ordering one thing, sometimes, that one person is actually giving you a lot more data.
Totally. Sydney, what are the, like, you worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and you talked to a lot of them in the Valley here in Montreal. what are some of the common mistakes do you see when somebody's building their businesses? Is it the fact that they're not looking at the cash and they're running out of it, or is it they're not focusing on the product market fit, or they're trying to monetize too early? What are some of the patterns did you find?
So the biggest one really is product market fit, and the second one would be financials. So we have one of the metrics being runway. So how many months does your company have left before you run out of cash? So QuickBooks did a great study that over 90% of companies in our province are financially illiterate, and over 50% in Canada are financially illiterate, which does not give a really good threshold right there. But that also tells you that they lack the resources and the support and everything. So when a lot of people say I don't have money, it could mean a lot of different things. It could mean that you didn't have the right co-founder. It could mean that you took too much time to find your product market fit, or it could mean that you're just not very good at managing money. That could also be true. So for all of these reasons, the reason we have these different metrics in order to score you and benchmark you is that all of these numbers tells a story. Your data doesn't lie. You can find out a lot from a person from the way that they spend their money, because it's also going to be the way that they spend the investors' money.
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely a great way to look at it. So it's all about long-term versus short-term vision, and especially when you're building a business, how an entrepreneur who just starting out can find the right balance of like long-term and short-term. Do I just try to find my first customers, or do I try to find or maybe satisfy an enterprise custom deal and build this customized product? How do you think they should approach it?
That's a great question. When you find your first customer, big or small, they're going to teach you a tremendous amount. I think it was Robert Herjavec from Dragon's Den and Shark Tank who once said that I'm not trying to build a business. I'm trying to find a customer, or I'm trying to build a customer, right? So that one customer, if they are able to give you $1 for anything, that is your business.
Yeah.
That is your business. So what's really interesting is that a lot of people build crazy functionality. They can build 5, 6, 7, 8 different kinds of features for something, and then they'll find out their customer's only paying for one. They didn't actually need the other 4. That's very possible, and you would have spent all of this money building, right? If you are paying attention to selling something to one customer and seeing if it's the same thing that the second customer is interested in, that's your trend. You just keep going from there.
I find when you are building something and it's free, everybody needs everything. I need to sync to Evernote. I need Zapier integration. But whenever you ask, "Oh, are you going to pay for it?" that just is such a different response.
Yeah, ask for $1. I think Noah Kagan is one of my favorite entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley, and he does this really funny bit. You guys got to check it out online. It's on YouTube,
Right.
and it was something about teaching engineers how to sell. So he was at Santa Monica University or something, and just tried to prove how doable product market fit is. You don't need an MBA, but you need it to see if you could sell.
Absolutely. You turned down funding 4 times for VenturX because the platform has room to grow. Explain how do you see it, and what advantage does it give you to hold off the rounds of investment?
The advantage is to talk about it here. I was offered funding from different institutions that I turned down because I knew that it was too early. I am sitting in a unique position where I get to see other startups, and I get to see their journeys to success and to failure and what that looks like. And I know that a lot of them that I have seen got funding too early. So they themselves were at a valuation which would be unfair to them, and it was not what they envisioned. I knew where my product had to be before
Right.
I could ask someone else for money in a way that was comfortable for me. And sometimes if you are really desperate for money, if you really believe that you need this, you need someone else's, XYZ, you need their expertise, you need their resources, you need their money, you may not always get to see that long journey that you envisioned, that path that you set out to have for yourself, for your team, and you could go down the wrong path if you take it too early, because it's more about your story and when you want to introduce new characters to help you tell that story.
Definitely. So walk me through the VenturX process. Like, if it's a startup, they're just starting out, they're maybe like in super early stages. How do they sign up for your tool? And then what are some of the initial data they're looking at? And how do they have to, like, what is the step by step process, or what do they have to figure out to take action on?
Yeah, so what they do is that they sign up for VenturX, which means that they fill out their basic information, which is their leads, their conversions, and things like that. We don't ask for, specific customer lists or anything like that at this stage, and how they are signing on. And we also have a QuickBooks integration, which means that you can sign into your QuickBooks and it would automatically put in your runway information. So it would calculate your burn rate per month, and then it would tell you how many months you have left and things like that. And then right away you'll get to see on the dashboard with these three major metrics, the runway, conversion, and engagement, how you are doing in comparison to others in your industry and sub-industry. And then from there, you would get the option to submit for funding now or later. So if you come on and you see that you're not really hitting those benchmarks just yet, you might want to wait a little bit and see which metric is doing the worst or which one's doing the best and which one you could improve today, things like that. So that's kind of how they incrementally get feedback from a real-time basis.
Tell me about the startups that you worked with so far. Are they small businesses, or are they small and enterprise? What like are you Do you have a preference for the certain type of industry?
Yeah, so we help fund between $100,000 to $2 million in about seed stage funding. So that is usually our range. So those who come within that range is perfect. Definitely prefer software, but there is no specific niche at this time between what kind of software. And they sometimes come as two people, and they sometimes come as 10 people.
Right. And speaking of vision, like, where do you see the product evolving? Like, how does the product map look like at this point? Or are you just still gathering the information before, like, knowing, okay, this is the direction we're gonna go?
So I'm heading out to TechCrunch actually next, no, this Friday. Yeah, this Friday. And so we are there to create more relationships and partnerships with our existing as well as new partners, venture capital partners. What I envision seeing is that the other side of the platform is going to be more and more and more robust. So it will be a one-stop shop that includes data that they need. It would include all the data room files. So everything is in one place. There's no more back and forth. Right now, it is a huge mess and a headache for both sides to have to ask for 8 different files back and forth all of the time, and not close funding or having people to do this manually, and then also being able to, of course, score them to see how much they match you, and what their likelihood of profitability is based on these kinds of metrics and based on their industry and comparison to others. So building a more robust side for the ventures, for the venture capitalists would be the next step, and to have more smart data, more data-driven data to help them make these decisions as quickly as possible.
That sounds very exciting. Now, Sydney, I wanted to move on a little bit to your personal side. How do you prefer to work? Because, like, I know a lot of people want to know, like, how can I maximize my productivity? Maybe I'm not getting everything done in a day. How's your work schedule look like? I know you mentioned before we went on, you're super busy. Obviously, you are. How do you like to work? How do you focus and prioritize things that get come up daily?
So there are a few things that I believe in, and one of them is the TEDx talk that was talking about taking control of your time, and so from that I've learned to use my calendar in a very specific way. I have scheduled certain things on certain days. So you can only book me on certain days. So you used to be able to only book me on all of Fridays and then like Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, because I believe that if you have everything back to back and you're blocking your time, then you are more efficient in that way. My hiring is always at the end of the day because it's low decision making for me. I can go through them. I have my own process, and then the beginning of the day, between 6 and I would say maybe 8, I would have my big tasks. So that's when no one is talking to me, no one's doing anything. So that's when I'm applying for grants. That's when I am dealing with big contracts and all of these bigger tasks things. So for example, this morning I accepted my nomination for the RBC Woman of Influence Award that I was just nominated for, which is fantastic.
Amazing.
And then it comes with a few essays that I have realized. So I spent all morning doing that at 6 in the morning, and then I hop on my daily Scrum calls with my team to talk about marketing updates, sales updates, and development updates. And then they have their tasks for the day. I've always been used to being a remote worker for my last like 3 jobs, so working from anywhere is very normal for me. Working from an office is now super foreign for me. It's total
Oh yeah, you
yeah,
get
it's
used to
very
this, right?
strange. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and so then that's kind of how I like to structure things. If you guys haven't checked out not podcast, that TED Talk, it is great. The other thing that I also do believe in is the 4-hour work week from Tim Ferriss, because I did see it happen in Silicon Valley a lot, seeing a lot of people use their creative energies in a very high productive and efficient way. Highly recommend that bestseller book if you haven't had a chance to pick that up yet as well.
I was always curious about 4-hour work week because like how is it possible to get all the work done in 4 hours, especially when
So
yeah, maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
So it's not exactly 4 hours for me. Also, to be fair, I'm like rereading it and stuff. So it's not exactly 4 hours. It's the principle that it's an 80-20 rule. So it's true in entrepreneurship. It is also true in your life. 20% of your clients will produce 80% of your income because they are your bigger clients. That is true. And then 80% of your clients will just kind of be like, yeah, or 80% of your time, or 80% of the partnerships. They don't really produce very much, or they don't really provide that large impact in most things, and that's fine. So it's kind of how you are prioritizing the most important things first. And if you only had to work 4 hours next week, what things would you do?
Yeah,
Those are your big tasks.
this is perfect. That's a great reframe.
Yeah. That's exactly what the mind frame is supposed to be. If you couldn't do more than 4 hours, like if you did, you would explode. What
Absolutely.
would the 4 hours be?
Sydney, do you do any yoga, any meditation, reading, journaling? Do you have any rituals in the morning and the evening to keep yourself on track?
I have started a morning ritual, which I now am rethinking. So the reason I started it was because I had a friend in London who was encouraging me to do it, so I did. And so I woke up and I'm actually rereading another book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Love it.
And yeah, so it's a very old book. The bookmark is apparently from when I was born. I don't know why it's still in that book. Like it was from a used bookstore. And so I also like the fact that it's like a lot of short stories, right?
Yeah.
So you can come and go as you wish. So I read that in the morning, and I try and meditate, but it turns out I'm really bad at it. So still trying. And then I make breakfast. I have my big task. So whatever my big task is, today it was the RBC award essays. Still not finished. I just had to do one essay, and then I work out every day. I do yoga, and I also do boot camp, which I love because I love going to like a class situation and kind of getting out of your normal environment. And
Right.
so if there's a yoga class or a boot camp class or things like that, I love it. And then I also cook for myself like every single day. I
Wow.
have that, and it's a huge calming thing, and it does not bother me if it takes me like 3.5 hours.
Wow, that's amazing. Sydney, when we talk about goal setting, do you approach setting goals, achieving goals as a daily activity? For example, you set a goal in the evening, and then you set it for the next day, or you set goals for a week, and then maybe you don't complete it on that day. No problem, you pick it up next day.
Yeah, so It depends on the goal and when it's due. So to me, a goal will get done if it's on my calendar. If it's on my vision board, which I do have now, it will less likely be done unless it's in a real bite size, right?
Right.
And so I think what Warren Buffett had said that you're supposed to make a list of 20 things, and then you remove the last 15 because you're really only going to do 5 in your whole life.
I remember that. Yeah.
It was really interesting, and so the ones that you actually put on your calendar are the things that you'll get done. So if I knew that I was having something that was due at the end of this week, I would schedule time in during my big tasks because I don't know exactly what's going to come on in the rest of the day, and that would be it. And then for my afternoons and evenings and things like that, I have more my rituals as opposed to goals, because my rituals will help me go to sleep, it will help me wake up, and exercise, all of these other things. But I also know, like, if you are more of a morning person or a night person, that's when you should adjust your goals.
Totally, I cannot agree more. Now, you did mention Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Are there any other favorite books on business or on marketing that you read that you would recommend?
Let me think. Yes, Dale Carnegie. So I love that, and I really love the audio version. It sounds like it's like from old England or something. It's really great. Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Chef. I also did read that. So because I love to cook so much, it takes a lot of time. So part of that book teaches you how to cook faster. And I thought this would be impossible to do.
Wow.
And he's explaining how you would make, I think, like a 5-course meal or something, but just faster.
I need that.
I thought it was so great. And then I also read fun books like Aziz Ansari and things like that. It's really fun.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Sydney, where is everybody can find you online?
They can find me on social media or on the website. So www.venturx.ca. So that's VenturX.ca. On Facebook, we have VenturX_team, as well as our Medium blog, Twitter, and Instagram. It's all the same, VenturX team.
And we will link all the resources below. So if you would like to follow Sydney's journey and what she's working on, what startup she's working on, any latest updates on VenturX, you'll be able to do it right below the show notes. Sydney, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really love your story. Great insights, great takeaways. We've got some cool book recommendations, and I will definitely learn how to cook faster, which is awesome.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sydney.